What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Breakout Finder podcast. I'm your host, Nate Liss. You can find me on Twitter at @AnOutrageedJew. And with me, to the left or the right, I don't know, this camera's inverted, is my man, Mr. Ryan Lopes. You can find him on Twitter at StillRyan5. And tonight, another big name, but more importantly,
it's a big one.
Original co-founder of the Breakout Finder, which you're tuning into right now, Mr. Russell Clay. You can find him on Twitter at RussellJClay. He's a part of a whole new thing now in his life. Russ, so what are you doing for the people that for some reason may not know who you are? Where are you now in the fantasy football world?
I am at fantasyguru.com and elitefantasy.com. I do some college football DFS, do season-long football, and mostly, I think most people know me from Dynasty content over the years, so I'm definitely doing that over at Guru as well. We just dropped our prices. Got to throw in a little plug here. We dropped it to $19.99 rest of the season, so come hang out with us. There's about 200 to 200 and some odd people in the league chat on Sunday mornings, so come hang with us there and get your start sits answered.
Look at a humble brag there by Russ at the end.
Right,
yeah,
dude, flexing a little delicate flex, dude. His polo suggested that a flex was not far behind.
I know, yeah. The polo was like the declaration of the air yards from the week before that just didn't work out. We should have known.
He looks good, man. He looks good. Rusty looks good tonight. Professional.
Also, I'd like to flash my debit card that I just canceled. So now you can all see the numbers. 474 is the back code.
What?
So
wow, this is this is very risky. Very risky.
Very risky.
Wow.
I'm a little taken aback.
Russ, you may not know our audience is vast and of different demographics. All it takes is one high level hacker.
You are broke by tomorrow morning, mister.
Yeah.
You have zero money.
You didn't know you own a new yellow Hummer, by the way.
Sent to my address.
And a handful of dildos. Someone just bought a ton of those. I don't know why. It just felt right.
A boatload of them. Hey, Russ.
Yeah.
Is it true? Are you currently moonlighting as a stand-up comedian? I mean, I know we talked about you being into comedy, and we've passed back and forth names of comedians that we both thought were funny. But are you doing stand-up right now?
I've been a fan for a long time, and I've always wanted to try it. And I did an open mic about 2 months ago and quickly realized, like, oh, wow, I don't know anything about it. Like, you get up there, and the lights are in your face, and you're just like, oh, this is not what I thought it was at all. And so there was like a little local class for $150, and they have a local comedian come in and like show you the ropes of, how you do stuff. So I've been taking that class, just had my first one on Sunday, and
that's sick.
It is tough, man. It's hard.
Is it like, I know that there's some out here, because you and I have talked. I've been into stand-up for a long time, too, and didn't quite have the nuts on me like you did to go out there and test my skills, but I've looked into these classes before. When you're done, do you have to do a live performance?
Yeah, well,
oh, boy.
I mean, technically, like, open mics do 3 minutes. You're not going out there and doing a half-hour set. You're going out there and throwing your best effort forward on 3 minutes. So it's not too much pressure, but yeah, at the end you do have to perform a little set there. So.
Well, you saw my pathetic attempt at doing some stand-up at my 30th birthday roast. It wasn't the worst thing, I don't think, but
no, it wasn't bad.
Dude, it's a scary time, man. Dude, so I got props to you, because that's big nuts.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Randy from South Park in the fucking wheelbarrow.
The wheelbarrow nuts. For sure. Just rolling down the street.
Yeah, dude, that's incredible.
The open mic, my knees were shaking like a little lamb, like a newborn.
I mean, you know how it is. We Ryan, I don't know if you listen to a lot of stand up. It's been something I've been into, and I really enjoy listening to it. It's just, there's some really funny people out there, but the idea that you would get on stage and you would put yourself out there and nobody would fucking laugh. That is, honestly, that's one of the scariest, like, I don't
It's
know.
a self-esteem killer. It's a self-esteem killer.
Yo, for sure.
It's a self-esteem killer.
It would be really, really hard to, like, pick myself up off the floor and come back the next day knowing that, like, I might only get a 0.5% better and I'd have to feel that sting again.
Man, would it be worse, like no one laughing, or like no one laughing but then like hearing yourself like laugh at your own shit like on the mic? Like is that even more brutal? Like you just kind of give yourself like a little like and you're like, oh,
you
God,
got
this
it.
This is it. This is just me.
You got to throw yourself some laughs, man. Either way, like get the people into it.
Get them involved.
Yeah, coax the fans. It's and speaking of getting people involved, this is a nice segue into this opportunity. Russ, we've talked to you about it, and a lot of people are starting to become aware of it as we've, gathered more and more at our Patreon account, patreon.com/Breakout Finder. We've been doing a lot of cool things over there, a lot of unique stuff, and one of the things that we do is a Patreon Q&A where you can write questions to Ryan and I, or if we have a guest, in this case, like Russ, you can write a question directly to him, and if he's feeling confident in it, if he likes it enough, if he respects what you put out there, then he might respond. So I'm going to have Ryan shoot these questions at you, man, and, if it's worth your time, Russ, let the people know what the answer is, and if it's not, you just dismiss it right away.
Right. Just give us just kind of give us the nod as if you're gonna start to answer, and if not, just kind of give us like the nod wave and tell us next or something like that. So, all right. First up here, buddy, we have rest of season. The question is a rest of season question. Todd Gurley or Austin Ekeler.
Who was the person that asked the question?
That's it. I did my best to write down the names for all these. I want to say, Nate, you might have added this one, man. I don't know if you got a name for this.
I didn't add any of these. Are you filibustering right now?
I might. So this either came to us by way of Patreon, which I think it did, or this one might have been a Twitter one. I have names of the other ones right here. Let's just call this one Jeremy. Jeremy asked this one.
Oh boy.
All right, Jeremy. It was Todd Gurley or
Austin Ekeler.
Well, considering Todd Gurley has survived Darrell Henderson's season and he's survived Malcolm Brown's season, it looks like his biggest issue right now is the offensive line. But I'm much more confident in Gurley's role rest of the season, and I'm a big Melvin Gordon guy, so I'm hoping he successfully shoves Ekeler in a locker and locks it and throws away the key and leaves him there to potentially, hang out for a few days.
Okay, so. Fair enough. We have some Ekeler and or Melvin Gordon related stuff further down the show sheet here. So we will leave that one where it stands. Our guy Russell says he's riding with Todd Gurley rest of the season. Question 2 from Kyle this time. We got another more or less a season question as well. Kyle's pondering Lamar Jackson or Russell Wilson. Nate, you're not allowed to even think about answering this one, man.
Oh my God. Kyle.
Oh boy. I think maybe this was close after the Miami Dolphins destruction. But at this stage in the game, DK Metcalf's block it, and obviously the passing volume isn't quite where we want it, but I mean he's putting together. This might be his age apex season, so I'm going Wilson.
Yeah, Russell looks
way up.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's silly.
You're supposed to be dialing up the questions. You're taking a slug of water mid-question, Ryan?
Was thinking about Russell Wilson. I immediately became parched. I was salivating and whatever else.
It was fucking dead air for 2 seconds. We lost 5 listeners. Next question.
Dyno trade, dynasty trade. Michael S. Michael S. is getting Chris Godwin, James Conner, Bobby Forrest, a.k.a. Robert Woods, Russie, your guy. Michael S. is giving Keenan Allen, Chris Carson, and DJ Moore.
All right, I have a general question I'm going to answer this question with a question.
No, fuck.
Is that how this works?
I don't think so.
Why why are people so intent on trading good players for other good players? Is it a feeling? Is it like people that want to change their rooms and they want to move the couch over here now?
Better feng shui.
Do they want to change up the feng shui of their team, or
I don't know? This is lateral.
Yeah, not totally, but like I have no initiative to trade Keenan Allen. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. He's on my team. I picked him. It was a great pick. I'm happy with it. That I just move on. You know what I mean? If I have that guy. So
I'm not allowed to answer these questions. Nate, do you have strong conviction one way or the other here? Because I think to Rusty's point, this is somewhat lateral. This is somewhat tight. I think you can go either way with it.
I'm with Russ to an extent. Here's the thing. It's kind of a wash on age because what you trade for Keenan Allen with Chris Godwin, you're giving it back with Woods and DJ Moore in a sense. But if you look at all three of these players on each side of this trade and you look at all of them at the best that they've been sort of on an average, average it out, I would almost go with the Godwin Woods Connor side. I mean, that's the one that I would take in this deal. I like Keenan Allen. He's clearly elite. Chris Godwin has been fantastic this year. Robert Woods has been great. That offense seems a little different this year with Cooper Kupp being like the major focal point of that offense, which kind of changes things. But yet again, DJ Moore's been up and down as well. So it kind of feels like a push to me. It is extremely lateral. Like you couldn't have put 6 guys and mixed them up 3 and 3 any other way and come up with like a more dead even trade to me. But if I had to pick one, I think I'm going to go with the Godwin side.
Michael S., there's your answer, my man. Keep those questions coming, man. Last one, boys. Last one, Rusty. Seahawks backfield question. I feel like we talk about the Seahawks backfield every other week. It's so good. So his question is, is it worthwhile, rostering a Chris Carson or Rashad Penny, or is this a backfield that's about to invest in an early 2020 draft pick? So I guess his question is, are either of the current assets worthwhile holds in a dynasty format?
I would say absolutely yes. In terms of Carson, again, I still don't find the long-term dynasty value of undrafted free agents, late-round players to be but obviously he has performed amazing. Obviously had those fumbles as well, but last year can't be forgotten, and he's sustaining that this year with, we talk about yards per carry not mattering much, and he's just getting destroyed behind the line right now. So I'd be much surprised. I don't think that's right English, but that's what we're going with for this one.
Much surprised.
If they invested in running back, I think they'd be much more likely to invest in offensive line next offseason. So I think they're rolling with Carson and Penny for the near to distant future.
Nate, our resident Seahawks guy, do you have anything here? Okay, so you gotta stop.
Yeah,
with
I
that.
do.
Just answer the question. Answer the question.
Okay, sorry. No, I think that Russ is right. Like I had talked to somebody about this the other day. Like I would be honestly surprised if I saw Seattle in the 2020 class, even though we all agree it's a very good class, invest in a running back earlier than the 4th round. I would assume it's later than the 5th round, because with the emergence of CJ Prosise this year as that upside athletic pass catching back that they drafted a few years ago with the hopes that he could finally stay healthy, in Chris Carson and Rashad Penny. So I don't see it in 2020. Yet to be determined, like Russ said, if Chris Carson goes into a tailspin and turns into the sort of the late round prospect and follows that historical trend, then maybe it happens, because Rashad Penny hasn't really proven himself to be worth the pick that he was purchased with. But I think for now, you're safe. If you have Carson, if you have Penny and Prosise sort of on that back end to kind of keep everything tied together.
I said that was the last question. I just popped open the Patreon app, and one of our new pals here, man, our guy Aldo, welcome, bro. He dropped a last minute question in there. So Rusty, the last one coming to you, man. And I know you brought up Melvin Gordon before, but Aldo's question is Melvin Gordon someone you would look to sell in Dynasty going forward. And he follows that up with, if you're getting a first rounder in return, and then he mentions obviously getting a Swift or a Dobbins or one of the Alabama wideouts. So I guess the question is, how much do you value these 2020 first round picks in comparison to a player that, again, you have made your affinity for pretty clear?
So my perspective on Melvin was, I was trying to trade him this offseason. He's getting into that age range where guys really tend to fall off sharply, or, some guys sustain till they're 30, but a lot of guys fall off around that age 26, 27 range. But since we're here, since that holdout happened, since Austin Eckler's around, I don't think it's the time to trade him. I'd wait until he starts getting those featured carries, probably till after the season, and then I'd really try to make my move, because after that he's going to free agency, not going to have that Phillip Rivers dump off. Like, Phillip Rivers is amazing for running backs in fantasy,
for sure.
And you look at Le'Veon this year. Le'Veon's still doing the same stuff. He's just on the Jets now, and it's like, man, that could be Melvin next year on, God, I don't know, Washington or something stupid. So, I'd wait till the offseason, sell before free agency.
Nate, and I'm assuming you wanna chime in, or you have nothing else to add to that, man?
The only thing I would add to that is I would caution people to trade elite talents for unproven players, especially if it's 1-for-1. Draft picks are great, and the higher the draft pick, the better. But a lot of these guys, even at this time, are kind of nameless, faceless players. We all love guys like Jerry Jeudy and some of these other players, but truth be told, we don't know that Judy's going to be good at the next level. I mean, he could stink. It seems unlikely given his track record, but I always have a fear of this. So I'm with Russ. I might wait till later in the year, or maybe a team that's contending is willing to give up a lot. If the deal's too good, I'm obviously taking it, because like Russ said, right? He's going to hit that. He's at that apex. He's on the other side. The decline is coming. You don't want to be holding the hot potato, right? So you want to move it. So with that being said, I'm kind of in the same mindset as Russ, but I'm pretty cautionary about incoming draft picks too.
One thing I'll add on to that, because I like that point. If you're contending, then you probably want to keep Melvin till the end of the year, because we already saw last week he's gonna slide right back into the featured role. So if you're contending, you definitely want to keep him and just ride out the year. But like Nate said, if you're 1-4 or something crappy, maybe wait till later in the year, wait till the last trade week, and then sell off to a contender. Yeah.
So thank you, Patreon, and thank you, Russie, for blessing us over here. Again, we try to get. I think I tried to get all the questions. But again, we're going to do this on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. Whatever Nate feels like as far as getting questions out there, questions and answers. We're excited to do it. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff coming on the Patreon side of things. Are we ready to dive into the meat of things?
Yeah, we should gallop right in.
Oh, huh? Nate, see, this is why.
Oh.
This is okay. See, you're gonna have that segue, and then you're gonna follow it up with the dabs again.
So it's a dad move. It's a dad move.
The first thing on the docket for tonight is we're gonna lead in with Michael Gallup, but I didn't add this to the show sheet, fellas, but I want to talk about some of these second year wideouts in general. But Russ, Michael Gallup, any thoughts on his season thus far? I have him on pace for just over 1,000 yards, 1,084 yards. Player profile had a Justin Blackmon comp coming into things. So Dak was looking good. The schedule was kind of soft to start for Dallas. They've kind of had their struggles recently. So talk to us about Michael Gallup. Thoughts, from a redraft perspective. Your thoughts from a dynasty standpoint as well.
Well, if I have to talk about Michael Gallup, then I have to. It brings me back to Colorado State, which means I have to talk about Rashard Higgins. Okay. And it's just been a really weird few years for me with Colorado State, because they always have that one guy every year who comes through and just Hulk smashes receiving yards. And my first experience with that was Higgins. And I was in love with Higgins, and then he just kind of fizzled out. So I was like, oh, okay, well, all this production is garbage, and none of these guys are going to be good. And then Michael Gallup comes through, and I'm like, yeah, no, And then he gets drafted into the third round, goes to an interesting spot. And, I mean, he's killing it. He looks great. And obviously he had that injury that kind of took him out for a few weeks. But now that he's back, right back to doing what he was before, looks super explosive. I'm not sure in Dynasty how we're going to be playing this long term as Dak's second receiver. I don't know how fantasy viable that is, but if he certainly looks good enough to me, so I like him, and I think he's a flex to wide receiver 3 moving forward in redraft.
I think that's a very reasonable and measured response. Nate, we can always count on you for things of the measured nature. What do you got?
Man, I wish my page would pull up. This is super duper unfortunate. I'm getting like a literal crash right now, so I'm filibustering. Here we go. Came up. All right, here we go.
Right on time.
So currently right now, Dak Prescott ranks number 5 in the NFL in passing yards. And in that offense, when he has been healthy, Michael Gallup owns 27% of the target share and 32% of the team's air yards. If you put him next to Amari Cooper, a player with infinitely more dynasty value, and compare the 3 weeks that these two have played together, they have almost literal identical production. I mean, the market share is to Gallup. The target share is to Gallup. He's been higher in both regards. He cedes a little bit of touchdowns and a little bit of yardage to Amari Cooper, but people are talking about Amari Cooper being a top 5 dynasty asset. So to Russ's point, it's hard to say where do we gauge these two players, but if I told you that you're going to take Amari Cooper in the first round of a dynasty startup, potentially early second, and Michael Gallup's going to fall way behind and has this type of upside, I'm not sure how you don't heavily invest in him because, and again, this is a sophomore breakout. Last year, people didn't really talk about Michael Gallup. There was no hype for Michael Gallup, but at the same time, there wasn't a lot of negative talk about Michael Gallup either. So this breakout as a sophomore is kind of a hearkening back to when players didn't just shit on the NFL in their first season. It was more like this. A guy got his chance in the second year, got acclimated to the offense, got used to the game speed, found his role, and then started to really tear it up. And Michael Gallup looks to be a stud, but it's only 3 games into the season for him, so it's kind of yet to be determined going forward. But man, he looks incredible.
I think coming into this fantasy season for season long purposes, a lot of focus was kind of on rounds 5, 6, 7, kind of that sweet spot where a lot of these second year players, the Christian Kirks, the DJ Moores, et cetera, were going. So I was looking at pace numbers for Michael Gallup, and I said, why not? Let's take a look and take a check in after week 5 and see where everyone else is going. So DJ Moore on pace for 1,126 receiving yards. Calvin Ridley, 944. Christian Kirk, 774. To Rusty's point, another player that was kind of banged up, but 118 targets. So Kyler Murray definitely looking his way. Hasn't really quite done much with them, but again, coming off an injury himself, maybe that changes. The one that obviously is going to stand out here, what DJ Shark is doing with Gardner Minshew. Gardner better than Baker Mayfield. Minshew, man, on pace for 1,552 yards with 16 scores. Just a monster sophomore campaign here. And then a couple other players that have kind of been more so on the letdown side for one reason or another. The duo out in Denver stuck with Joe Flacco, Courtland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton, a player that I'm really high on just from a pure skill standpoint, and obviously stuck with Flacco right now. And then Dante Pettis, who just looks not too great. So a couple players there from the Pettis side to the DJ Shark side. I say all that to just turn it over to you guys. If you have anything to extrapolate from these second-year receivers from a season-long standpoint for the listeners, from a Dyno standpoint from the listeners, Russ, spill your guts, man. Let your heart out. What do you got for us, bro?
Yeah, DJ Chark is one of the more interesting prospects to come through in the last few years, mostly because of this development. And I've obviously taken years, and similar to the Higgins thing. Through his high school recruiting and through his first couple years, I was like, oh, Malachi Dupree, he's the next LSU wide receiver. He flames out. Traven Durrell flames out. They have, and then I assume, like, oh, okay, this new staff doesn't know how to receivers. And then Chark Cohen really doesn't break out till his final season. Has an elite athleticism, gets drafted in the second round. And I'm like, okay, he's a deep threat. He'll be a deep threat. He'll have some big spike games and kind of figure it out in the NFL, have a long career, but not necessarily be a fantasy guy. And then this happens. And it's like, wow, what is this guy actually? So I'm kind of fine tuning that. I was a little higher on him coming into the NFL than others just because I value draft positions so highly. But, I wasn't his biggest fan, and I'm very shocked right now. Dante Pettis, we get Devontae Adams every once in a while, but for the most part, when you're looking this bad and you're getting the coach speak against you, not usually a good sign for your long-term career. I think he's going to be able to, get more opportunities in other places and stuff, but it seems like he's sinking down the depth chart there and kind of ugly. DJ Moore's just on hold right now. I don't think we can really judge him for what Kyle Allen is putting out there. And, I that kind of goes for the Panthers offense other than McCaffrey because – Kyle Allen. Come on, dude. Yeah. Like, come on. I know Kyle Allen. He may have fooled everyone that Arizona Cardinals game. No, I know Houston Cougar Kyle Allen. I know. I've seen him. That's enough, Kyle Allen.
Nate, the mic is yours, dude. Before we move on here.
Oh man. No, I think Russ so eloquently put it. Look, man, Dante Pettis, I mean, if you watch the game the other night, he just looks like he has no confidence at all. He looks like he's got zero confidence. He looks like a guy who's never walked up to a urinal in a baseball stadium before.
What is this analogy?
Dudes lined up at the urinal next to him. And he's just like, he's got the same lamb legs that Russ talked about earlier. And he's just like, oh, fuck.
He's nervous.
Yeah, he's nervous. And his knees are chattering and he's barely pissing. It's dribbling. That's what Dante Pettis looked like to me. I mean, he gets a holding penalty against him. He drops a wide open ball on a slant route where he had the guy beaten by like 1.5 yards. I mean, there were so many things that didn't go his way. And this just looks like a player whose confidence is in the shitter. But With that being said, somebody had to breed innovation, and let's talk about Richie James. Is he dead, or do we love Richie James still?
Russ, go for it, buddy.
I still love him, but again, his situation with draft position and how he's climbing up a mountain right now. To be, he was a 7th round pick, right? And Deebo Samuel there with Pettis there, with the plethora of other guys, good Marquise Goodwin. These are pretty draft position pedigree type players, and it's really hard to scale that mountain. And I'm not saying he's done. It seems like Trent Taylor's doing us a lot of favors right now, but this is a tough mountain, tough depth chart to scale. And I want him to make an impression on other teams with the 49ers, but I'm not really expecting anything, right now. I think he's going to be a second team guy.
Yeah, and Nate and I spent a bunch of time talking about the San Francisco depth chart this past offseason. Things have shaken out differently with the whole Dante Pettis story. So even if you're not considering him, that backfield's loaded. We saw what Breida was able to do last night. Tevin Coleman still in the fold, obviously a player that Kyle Shanahan's very familiar with. George Kittle, one of the elite tight ends in the league. Jalen Hurd was kind of a buzzy name this offseason as well, and kind of one of those versatile weapons that Shanahan might start to incorporate more and more between Deebo, Goodwin, the tight end, the backfield. It's definitely going to be a long climb for someone like Richie James, who pulling up his page on Player Profiler doesn't really do a ton as far. I mean, 63rd percentile breakout age. Other than that, just doesn't do anything athletically, dominator rating wise. So just given his current profile, I know the tape at Middle Tennessee was solid and everything for those that kind of gravitate towards that side of the evaluation. But I'm definitely with Russie. It's going to be a long climb for someone like Richie James, who definitely had his share of followers throughout the draft cycle.
Have at it, Ryan.
We're just going to keep it rolling.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I got nothing to add to that.
You got nothing else. You got nothing else.
I'm with you. I mean, look, it's Richie James ever making it was an incredible long shot. But he's had some opportunities, and boy, Dante Pettis does not look good. Okay.
Enough of that. The next topic on the table, Russie, Aaron Jones. What Aaron Jones did last weekend. No good. 19, 107, 4 on the ground, added 7 for 75 through the air. The dude, speaking of Randy Marsh, the dude had the wheelbarrow on the field the entire game, up and down Cowboys field, man. Had the little wave to Byron Marshall on the whatever the hell the corner's name is on Dallas there when he was running towards the pylon for his third or fourth score. So I personally am very high on Aaron Jones. I had him as, I believe, the RB10 coming into this season. Like him for Dyno purposes as well. Was high on him coming into things. The biggest question for Aaron Jones has always just been what the staff thinks of him. He was kind of fighting off Jamal Williams a little bit. There was some Dexter Williams buzz coming into the season. So we saw last week, I think, what what Aaron Jones can bring to the table. You might have a bit of a different take on Aaron Jones here, Russ.
Well, again, like almost all of my dynasty strategy, I play a lot of best ball dynasty. Almost all of my strategy is based on draft position and just hoarding as many high pedigree players as I can. So when a guy like Aaron Jones just balls out and is filthy and is scoring, 4 touchdowns, that makes me mad because I know I'm not going to have any shares. And it's like him and Adam Thielen's been following me like a ghost for the last 3. Will he please stop? When is this going to end?
Sometimes good players tend to play good. Again, I'm going to go back to the player profiler page here for Aaron Jones. Again, a player that I personally was high on coming into the draft. 96th percentile college dominator, 96th percentile college yards per carry, 90th percentile college target share. His best comparable is some guy named Christian McCaffrey, 5'9", 208. Again, last weekend was the story, in my opinion. Again, I'm probably a little bit biased inherently, but I mean, like, he is a true feature workhorse back, and he just needs his shine, man. He just needs his volume, and the Packers were hesitant for whatever reason to give it to him. So Nate, we had the Aaron Jones nuts in the field game. What is your? I'm on one side of things. Russie's kind of warming up. It sounds like. What's your stance on Aaron Jones now and going forward?
Here's my stance on it. Look, 5th round pick in 2017. These guys, year to year, can be replaced like that in one draft class. All it takes is a 3rd round pick in 2020 if the Packers feel like they want to invest in it, and suddenly owning a player like Aaron Jones in Dynasty feels like rocky ground to be standing on. We talked about this on many podcasts about Aaron Jones prospects in the future. He's looked great in a handful of games this year. There's been some other games where he hasn't looked good, against Philly, against Denver. Obviously, those are different animals. But in those games, he was targeted a little bit more. In the Packers offense, it's a great offense to be a part of, obviously. And in terms of redraft, I love Aaron Jones. There's no competition for Aaron Jones this year if he can stay healthy. And he has been good all the way back to last year. He was a great player last year too. And we talked about, if he can only get the opportunity, he'll be even better the next year. And he looks great. The problem is, what is he going forward? And this show flirts with sort of a hybrid basis of, redraft and dynasty. So in dynasty, I'm selling high because I'm concerned that his future may come with some competition. A lot of us thought that Darrell Henderson was even going to go to Green Bay. And there was a fear, like a hypothetical fear that, oh shit, If Darrell Henderson goes to Green Bay, a guy that we've never seen in the NFL, that's going to kill Aaron Jones' value. Well, luckily, nobody went there. There was no consequence, but that doesn't mean it won't happen in 2020. So in terms of redraft, I'm all in. I'll get him where I can get him. In terms of dynasty, man, if he's at as high a value as he's ever going to be and you don't need him on your roster, I'd make a move.
Russ, plant your flag, man.
All right. So, and let's say, a few weeks ago, Jamal Williams was stealing a lot of run in that offense. And I don't think that has anything to do with Aaron Jones' talent. I think he's clearly the superior runner. I think it's just that the Packers don't view him. And okay, let me also say something else. Why are we giving running backs 30 touches in a game in 2019? What is going on? A running back should not get more than 25 touches in a game. We know this. We know what happens. We've seen this so many times, and I just see the Vikings grinding Dalvin Cook into the ground. I'm like, what are you doing? He's healthy. Give him 20 to 25 touches a game. Give him 22 touches a game. I'm cool. But I think if you want Aaron Jones to have a long career, I want him in that, let's say 17 to 20 touches a game. I feel like that is a really good role for him. I don't know. I don't want running backs. I mean, unless they're doing what Christian McCaffrey's doing, I don't really want a running back getting over 25 touches in a game. I don't want a running back getting 400 touches in a season. I just think that's dumb. It's kind of like pitchers in baseball. They figured that out a decade ago. You can only use so many innings before the guy's arm pops out. And it's like, all right, why is Leonard Fournette getting 30 touches a game? Can you please stop? So that's my rant on that. But I think Jones is fine. He's talented, but I see him similar to Marlon Mack, where we look at Jordan Howard a few years ago, 5th round pick, and crushing. Not quite as explosive as the other guys, but I don't know about long term. And I will say Aaron Jones follows me on Twitter because tweets back in 2015 when he was in college. So me and him are cool.
You guys are tight. You guys are tight.
But Dynasty, I'm not in.
So there was a little bit of Christian McCaffrey talk there as well, and Christian McCaffrey is the next player that I want to talk about, especially after what he did to Jacksonville last week, and Russ kind of hinted at. I mean, the workload was there: 19 rushes, 19 targets. The guy just does it all at a very high level. He was my running back one coming out back in 2017, and just somehow even succeeding those expectations for me. So my question here was: is it far-fetched to say I have Christian McCaffrey as the premier running back in all of the NFL? Is that a hot take? Are there concerns about the way he plays his game, the workload that he's getting now down the road? What's your stance as far as our guy Christian McCaffrey, Russ?
Yeah, shout out to Ryan. I can remember having multiple conversations with you back then, and you were the whole time you were like, "It's C-Mac, bro. It's C-Mac.
He's everything that we want."
And I was like, "What about this fat load over here at LSU? He's pretty awesome." And you're no. And I'm like, "No, dude." And you're like, "No, it's McCaffrey." And I was like, "All right,
this is the guy."
But my favorite part about McCaffrey, and I know he kind of left last game with cramps or whatever, but when I watch a guy like Saquon, there's 3 or 4 plays a game where I'm like, is he getting up? Oh man, can this? And McCaffrey takes hits, and it's like they don't. Him and Kamara, man, they just take on contact, and it doesn't even look like it affects them. And obviously that's anecdotal, but I kind of view him as well, maybe he can handle this workload. Maybe he is like LaDainian Tomlinson. I mean, I think we have to start making that conversation be had, because it's pretty undeniable at this stage, and he's handling a enormous workload, and he's just crushing it just like he did at Stanford. So, I mean, this dude is really special. I still think Saquon is Bo Jackson of our time, and he's going to be my RB1 until his knees and legs are amputated. But
just leave his body.
I have no problem with McCaffrey as the top dynasty. I think it's those two by a wide margin at this stage.
Nate, do you have any problems, Nate?
No, I think we said this last week. I think Christian McCaffrey, and LaDainian Tomlinson's a name that comes to mind. But I think right now, this version of a football running back, this is the highest floor of any running back I've ever seen for fantasy football. He's already got half as many carries as he had in 16 games last year and 5 this year. He's already halfway there. So at 10 games, he will have already surpassed all the games last year. And then you go and look at his targets. He's got a quarter of the targets. He's on pace again for 120 targets. So 120 targets, 300 carries. He's going to have the most monster year we've ever seen. And unless he's getting hurt, the sky's the limit. He could likely finish with the greatest fantasy football season we've ever seen. He might not have the touchdowns by the end of the year, a Sean Alexander level amount of touchdowns. But Christian McCaffrey is undeniably great. And if you own him in a dynasty league, I made a trade a few years back, and I ended up sending Kareem Hunt in the deal. And God, I think about it like every morning when I wake up. I lean over to my side of the bed. I kiss my picture of Christian McCaffrey and just think, where is Kareem Hunt right now? And I just make my way to the bathroom. But it's an incredible year, man. It's an incredible year. And I really do hope that all this volume doesn't wear on him, because we're seeing one game he had almost 40 touches. So
yeah. That I just don't. Can we not?
Hashtag save Christian or something like that. Hashtag think about Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ed McCaffrey is going to cry a tear if he misses a game too. So we got to make sure. No, it's funny because he had almost 30 touches. He was just shy of 30 touches last week against Jacksonville, and when he left the game, he was diagnosed with general soreness.
One would think.
Yeah.
One would think.
So
I'm not
crazy.
a doctor, bro. I'm not a doctor.
Right? General soreness. God, the guy's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
I think it's also interesting, too, that this was, I think, this the second year in a row now where, like, at some point during the offseason, Ron Rivera, someone from the coaching staff, came out and said, it's probably time that we just dial it back for Christian. We got to get, we got to help Christian out. And this year, they're feeding him more than ever. And it's glorious for fantasy owners. But to Russie's point, you want to think about the long-term impacts here. You say that, and then you immediately say, you watch him play, man, the guy's he's just rocked up, dude, and he has no problem just right through the hole and it's just taking on contact. He is a ton of fun to watch, and it is fun to watch him flourish. From one running back to another, Russ, we're going to talk about, we need Nate and I kind of did this maybe a week or two ago. We need a temperature check, because you are in my mind anyway, you are the de facto Royce Freeman. I swear you must have T-shirts or posters or something like that hanging up somewhere. But I remember, as much as I liked Christian McCaffrey, you might have been just as high or somewhere in that neighborhood on Royce Freeman. Is it going to be Royce Freeman time in Denver? Is that slow? No. Is that slowly approaching, or no? Oh no.
We were humbled. The Royce Freeman fans, we were humbled. As I said, earlier in the show, Phillip Lindsey really just took me by my pants.
He gave you a spanking.
He opened the locker, put me on that little hook.
Yeah, left you there.
And then he turned it, and I just said, "Yeah, you can lock it." And he just did that to me.
I don't want any problems.
He's continuing to do that this year. There's no regression at all. He's just still amazing. And Royce is getting a lot of touches. He's on pace for 200 touches this year.
Yep.
He's getting the usage. He's just not getting the touchdowns. He's getting a lot more usage in the passing game because of Joe Flacco this year. I don't even have a problem with the role. It's just he's never going to be a featured back with a talented guy like Lindsey there. And I wasn't hoping for a regression this year. I was hoping for a big regression this year. And Lindsey's he's just a very, very good football player, and that's not going to change. So us Royce fans, we're going to have to deal with a committee for the next few years, man.
Just stay in that locker.
Yeah. It's just maybe a flex every once in a while in a good matchup, and We just take our little change when we get it, our little dividend, and
just say thank you and keep it moving.
Yep.
Nate, we talked about Lindsey this offseason as we tried to figure out the Denver backfield, and the argument against the Lindsey was that in order for him to kind of keep up this pace, this efficiency, this output, he's essentially a Jamal Charles type player. And to Rusty's point, he's probably not that, but there really hasn't been a dramatic drop off like again some of us Royce Freeman fans would have liked. So Nate, give the listeners put a little bow on it. Are you, as far as Royce, are you holding in, just hoping for that splash game or two? Are you trying to get rid of him and get whatever you can at this point?
Do we root for injuries on this show?
No,
Royce Freeman,
do we?
Yeah.
No.
Well, yeah, we do. There are no restrictions on the Breakout Finder podcast.
Okay, you're right.
We said that going in. We said we don't hold back. Phillip Lindsey weighs about as much as a breadstick from Olive Garden, and I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I'm not going to say it's going to happen either. I don't know, but at some point, Phillip Lindsey is going to break. It's going to happen, and when he breaks, naturally, Joe Flacco will cripple Royce Freeman's chances of doing anything with any semblance.
Dude, that was like a straight Shakespearean. Like I was motivated, and you just killed us again.
I know. I just wanted to crush it, but if you look at the touches this year between he and Phillip Lindsey, like Russ alluded to, you look at their role. They're not that dissimilar this year. It might be a difference of I don't know, like 15 total touches on the year. So it's not like Phillip Lindsey is necessarily like running away with an 80-20 split. Royce Freeman's role is still pretty decent. But this Denver team with Joe Flacco and his 6 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, they're 1-4. It's Joe Flacco. At some point, we're gonna have to roll. We're gonna have to roll to our guy who's the backup. It's gonna be time soon, right? Are we calling for it? Are we calling for the removal of Joe Flacco? Maybe that'll help the odds of this. But the Phillip Lindsey thing, I mean, Russ, you're a numbers guy. You're a history guy. You're a fantasy football historian. I mean, what are the odds that a guy like Phillip Lindsey with his size goes much longer and doesn't sustain a real injury?
There's no precedent. This is totally unprecedented. There have been small guys before, like Warrick Dunn. Warrick Dunn was obviously filthy for a decade, but Warrick Dunn was a first-round pick. Warrick Dunn was this highly touted. He came into the NFL with a guaranteed role. There's been a few
Mike
other guys.
Allstott.
Yeah. Like Darren Sproles has obviously been a huge fantasy guy before, but he never had 100 rushing attempts or anything like that. Lindsey is grinding out between the tackles runs at 190 pounds. Yeah. It's amazing. So I don't know.
The whole unprecedented element just really just drives the knife even further into. I mean, Royce was on paper, man. Royce was looking so pristine, and yeah, boys, we just got to kind of wait it out. And I'm not gonna say the I word. I'm not gonna bank on the I word. Nate has different feelings about rooting for the I word here, man. But
you don't have to say the I word. You can say hurt. He could get hurt.
I'm not gonna say the H word either. I'm not gonna say the H word either. Heck,
how about
I'm not gonna say heck on this show.
How about his wife or significant other has a baby every single weekend for the rest of the week?
Every weekend. Love that.
Lots of women.
Shout out to fertility.
Possibly. But look, his opportunity share, he's number 26 at the position, 54%. So, again, I know it seems bleak for whatever reason. It's never been closer between two players and felt further apart. I can't make sense of it. But I'm not giving up on Royce. I still like Royce. He's inexpensive. And if Lindsey gets hurt, again, like Russ said, we're in uncharted territories. I don't know where we are right now. What's that movie of Sandra Bullock where she can't see anything? The Duck Blind or something like that? Bird Box? Jack, what was it?
Bird Box.
Is it Bird Box?
Bird something. Bird
I like
Caller.
Duck Blind better. Bird
Duck
Caller?
Blind. Duck Blind might be it, dude. You might be on.
Get us to the next question quickly.
Next question, man. We're leaving everything Sandra Bullock behind. We briefly grazed over this one before, boys. Austin Ekeler coming off of a 16 I believe my notes are accurate. 16 target effort last Sunday. I think it was a matter of kind of the stars aligning the game script working in his favor. Melvin Gordon's first game back, et cetera, et cetera. Rusty's kind of made his stance on the Chargers backfield clear. Again, maybe a little more biased towards a certain player or another, but Russ, the question is, and we kind of took a Patreon question earlier, Todd Gurley or Ekeler, but let's just open it up in general. What's the plan for Ekeler going forward? Is he worth? I mean, obviously in redraft, I imagine you're kind of going to ride things out unless you can kind of get some sort of decent return for him here. But as far as dynasty redraft, Austin Ekeler, kind of open it up and kind of tell us all your thoughts.
Oh, I'm the Fox News coverage of Melvin Gordon. This is not fair and balanced here.
It's not. It's not.
Who's that guy? O'Reilly.
That's you. Russ O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This would be you come in the spin zone and it's all over. So I just mixed up like 7 references there.
What are we doing right now?
We're gonna keep rolling. I just think they view Ekeler as the same guy he was last year, which is a very explosive receiving down back. I don't think they ever wanted to give him 15 rushing attempts a game. I don't think that's smart. Again, if we're trying to optimally use players, I don't think that's the way to use Austin Ekeler. Could he eat into Melvin's receptions more than last year? I definitely think that's a possibility, but Melvin's going to be getting 20 touches a game here pretty soon, and barring an injury to him, I think it's going to be pretty similar to last year.
Nate, is the Ekeler situation similar to the Duke Johnson situation in the sense that they're built somewhat similar? I think Ekeler showed through four or so weeks of the season that he can handle a lot of the work and produce. To Rusty's point, is that a smart utilization of his profile? Probably not. We're kind of seeing some kind of going off topic here a little bit, but I mean, this Duke Johnson situation in Houston, this is a player that I think you and I both think is capable for a lot more, but we talked about Breida getting cucked a few weeks back. Is Duke Johnson getting cucked? Is Austin Ekeler a permanent cuck as well?
Austin Ekeler, no, I don't think so. And here's the thing. Austin Ekeler was fantastic in his opportunity, just like when Thomas Rawls was great in his, and many other running backs have been great in theirs. Look, Austin Ekeler did have 16 targets, but let's not forget that Keenan Allen had 6. Keenan Allen is typically the recipient of 12 to 15 targets a week. In this particular game, he wasn't. The game script was clearly different. Melvin Gordon was still targeted 6 times, which by his standards is pretty damn good. So I like Austin Ekeler, but we watched the running game role get diminished. It was basically a 4-to-1 ratio, 12 carries to the 3 that Ekeler had. I'm with Russ. Melvin Gordon is the guy. He was drafted to be the guy. He was one of the very best running backs in fantasy football over the last 2 years. He was absolutely dominant last year. Austin Ekeler stepped into the same opportunity in the same offense with, again, Russ touched on this too. God, Russ, why you say everything before I can say anything. Phillip Rivers is a phenomenal quarterback for the running back. I mean, it just makes things easier on him, especially in the passing game role. So I like Austin Ekeler potentially as a tradable asset. He could be good somewhere else. But the reality is that this is Melvin Gordon's roster. If I own Austin Ekeler, if you did, you should have sold high on him. Because even if they came back to a 50-50 split, Austin Ekeler was never going to produce like he was for the 4 weeks before it. So why the hell were you still holding him? So that's number one. And number two is, even if he goes somewhere else, what are the real odds that he becomes the feature back? It could very well end up a Duke Johnson-esque situation where he goes to another offense that already has an incumbent running back like the Jets, and all of a sudden he ends up behind a guy like Le'Veon Bell or somewhere else where he ends up being a depth player. I don't know that Ekeler would sign a contract like that because he may believe that he's got more skill set than that. But a 200-pound running back, it's questionable what his full-time future will be.
Can I throw in a quick Duke Johnson thing?
Please.
I think this is a case of we're right on the talent and there's medical stuff we don't know. The public just doesn't know because it doesn't make any sense. he's been good ever since he's been in the NFL. And I do remember an article back in the day, he almost retired early in his Miami career due to a bunch of injuries and stuff like that. And I just wonder if he has medicals, kind of like I didn't know Tevin Coleman had, what's that blood thing where you go to
cell?
Yeah, he had the sickle cell trait, and that's probably why he fell to the third round of the draft. And I just wonder, I have to think Duke has medical stuff that these staffs, because they traded a third round pick for him. They were like, okay, we like him, and then they probably got him in there, got his medical records, and were like, oh crap.
This is what the Browns knew that we. I got you. I mean, honestly, dude, it's one of those things where because again, the talent is clearly there. The production on bad Browns teams was clearly there. So he's checking boxes, but again, there's stuff that us behind the mics and fans we not privy to, and maybe it'll come out down the road, or maybe it's just staffs just being NFL staffs and not understanding how to use. Who knows? I mean, at this point, Duke Johnson, Unsolved Mystery, Nate, that could be like a pod title or something like that for you.
I like that. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Let's see. We're gonna keep it rolling here, getting towards the end of the line here, boys. This one's. I jotted this one down. I woke up in a feverish sweat, Russ, and I just had to get this one written down. Who the hell is Byron Pringle?
Oh, a Kansas State, I believe. Kansas State alumni.
Okay.
And he was a pretty good player. He had some productive years. He never really stuck out to me. I kind of thought he was sort of a mid-tier player. I was shocked. I believe he went undrafted. Whenever I open a browser, my Skype gets sketchy because my computer stinks. But
please don't do that. Yeah, please don't do that.
Someone look that up. I'm pretty sure
I believe he is undrafted. Yeah, I believe he is undrafted. He is coming off of, again, just to add more fuel to the fire here. He's the proud owner of a 6-103-1 line last week. And again, the Chiefs anticipating Tyreek Hill's return, Sammy Watkins on the mend once again. So he kind of slotted in and got it done. I guess the question that I just want to know is, I mean, is this a player that's, I guess he's in the right spot. He's on a Kansas City offense. Is this anyone that you're gonna go ahead and kind of pencil into some long-term dynasty plans, Russie?
Kind of feels like the DeMarcus Robinson game where, it's DeMarcus Robinson. He's fine. Byron Pringle's fine. The long-term upside is in Mecole Hardman. That's kind of the guy I'm looking at there for long-term upside. And obviously Hill, if he, stays on the straight and narrow. Sammy Watkins, man, what a bummer. When Nate was talking about Jerry Jeudy earlier and saying we don't know, I feel like, at least 5% of him was talking about Sammy Watkins when he was making that statement, because he was a can't miss. And he's just been injured every year since, his second season. And I was looking it up today. I think he's missed 20 games in his first 5 years, but that's also not accounting for all the games he's been on the injury report, which is probably more than half of those. So really disappointing career for him so far. And it's just a bummer when guys can't stay healthy. That's been his biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, because Watkins, again, to your point, Watkins was maybe for me, maybe for most, he was kind of on that Amari Cooper kind of tier of, coming out. Like he was, again, to your point, a can't miss, I don't know, generation, whatever you want to call him. He was very good. Nate, do you have anything pulled up or anything you want to add as far as, I mean, again, I think if the Breakout Finder loved a Sammy Watkins and all the numbers that we were all given, whether you're on the numbers side, whether you're on the film side, like Sammy Watkins was that guy. And again, he was the next person we're going to talk about here. Just a player that throughout his career just can't stay healthy. I don't know what, I mean, you feel bad cutting bait and turning around because his talent's clearly there. But at what point is enough with Sammy Watkins?
Sammy Watkins, I mean, in my opinion, is right there for the best college prospect I've ever seen in terms of it, when you translate it to sort of dynasty, or you could talk about college prospect, period. But when you bring it now to dynasty, you look at the athleticism, you look at the draft position, you look at the freshman production, you look at the conference he played in, you look at the competition he faced, you look at the teammates, you look at the production. The guy did it all, right? And then you go to the tape. and go, holy shit, this guy's incredible. It's truly unfortunate. He should be, by all accounts, one of the best receivers we've ever seen. And there's been some other players like him that injury really ruined the career. We never got to see the player that we expected them to become because of the injuries. And this oftentimes happens to a lot of players. And my comments about Jerry Jeudy earlier were more about potentially not even an injury. Even if a guy doesn't get hurt, you don't know if they'll ever hit. But an injury derails everything. An injury reduces their opportunity to, get reps, produce, grow in this offense, find a role. There's just so much time that's missed. And Sammy Watkins is just such a tragic story that, if you own him, I don't even know what you do at this point. He was at an absolute peak in week 1. To those of you that sold after week 1,
Hats
you are
off.
a genius.
Hats off, man.
Yeah.
Absolute
Unreal.
fantasy stud. You've got stones on you if you sold Watkins after week 1, because you probably thought, holy crap, this is the guy. He's back. Watkins is back. He's not. It's the same Sammy Watkins.
Yeah,
He's still hurt. And I have a question. Russ, where did you say you thought Byron Pringle went to school?
Was it Kansas State?
He nailed
Was
it.
it Kansas State?
He nailed it.
Is
Yeah.
that correct?
And he was undrafted. Rusty's 2 for 2.
All
Hey,
right.
do you know anybody else who went to K-State that might be a virgin? Plays in the NFL.
I didn't know. You're really gonna do this.
Let me think about this.
Go through the list.
Are there any? Well, it's not Chris Harper because that man was very thick
It's
and
not
handsome.
Jordy Nelson.
Not Jordy Nelson.
Keep
Is it
going.
Daniel Thomas?
No, keep going. Come on.
Josh Freeman?
No. Keep going.
Oh, wait. Does he play for the Seahawks?
He does play for the Seahawks.
It's
on.
Tyler Lockett.
It's
Hold
Tyler
on.
Lockett.
A virgin?
Tyler Lockett's a virgin, man.
Who told you that?
Russ, go ahead. The floor is yours.
There, mid-afternoon today, there was a report that came out. Adam Schefter on his podcast reported and interviewed Tyler Lockett, confirming he was a virgin. And the world is shaken. I don't think we'll ever be the same. Quite the. It's just amazing. That's an amazing accomplishment for like a pro football player who,
It's
handsome
very good
guy.
at the sport. Yeah, he's a baller.
he's on TV, star in college, and pretty amazing.
Nate and I were talking off air a little bit. I for one applaud the abstinence, man, I was hypothesizing that maybe like the Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson, like that's like Tyler Lockett gets his jollies, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's like it's sensual for him to catch these deep bombs. It's erotic. These toe taps. These toe taps that Lockett has, it's like that's what really gets his blood going. You know what I mean?
How many retweets would I get if I if I make a graphic that says Tyler and then it says Lockett, LOCK-IT, and then I put a chastity belt on him?
Infinite.
I get like a million.
You would break
Do
Twitter.
that.
You would break Twitter.
As soon as we're done, I'm doing that.
Man, listen, shout out Tyler Lockett.
I'm seriously surprised because if I was in his shoes, I would, it would be difficult for me not to be out there mixing it up. Mingling.
Good word.
Yeah.
Good word.
No, that's great. That's a great word. He's good for Tyler Lockett. Look, to our listeners that are on that same slow tugboat, if you will, traveling. Good, good for you. Good for Tyler Lockett.
Right on.
I don't want him to now decide that he doesn't want to be one, and then his fantasy production tanks. But his fantasy production is more important than him breaking his his abstinence or losing his virginity. That doesn't matter, Tyler. What matters is you go out there and maintain this incredible efficiency with Russell Wilson, this mind melt. What matters is that, like he said, like Ryan said, that you're toe tapping in the end zone. What matters is that you're open all over the field by 2, sometimes 3 yards. What matters is that you're the man in Seattle because we need you, even though DK Metcalf, who had the best spot in the draft, is still an amazing player. Tyler Lockett, we need you, even though Will Dissly is pretty incredible too. What happened? How did Seattle get all these weapons? Where do all these guys come from?
Dude, I'm glad you brought up. I'm glad you brought up Will Dissly. I want to know about, we can talk about Will a little bit. What I want to know about is what's going on in Oakland. Darren Waller, it's been Darren Waller, it's been Mark Andrews, it's been the Will Disleys, it's been these late round tight ends and Austin Hooper to an extent, although he was probably going a little bit earlier than all these guys, but it's been these mid to late round tight ends that have just been out here crushing on a week to week basis. I tweeted a couple days ago, and friend of the show, our guy Matt Kelly jumped in and basically said that Darren Waller was a screaming sell in Dynasty because of the way that Foster Moreau has been playing. Foster Moreau has been a player that from week to week has seemingly just grown. And I think Gruden's going to kind of continue to get him involved, even with Darren Waller there as well. So any strong Darren Waller, Foster Moreau takes, Russ?
When Nate said toe tap, my first thought was Tony toe tap, which is Antonio Brown. We don't
talk about him.
What do we think his status is? Virgin?
Oh my God.
Oh, Antonio Brown?
The opposite of that.
What's the opposite of virgin other than very much not a virgin?
That is what I was hinting at. Very much not that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. In terms of Will Dissly, I mean, Nate would probably have a better perspective than me, but it seems like he has some long-term potential here. He's looked really good so far. I wasn't too high on him coming out of Washington. I don't think he was all that productive, but seems like they've unlocked something. And again, with Metcalf and Lockett on the outside, not going to be much attention thrown into the middle, so I think he's going to continue to be open. I'm surprised to hear that with Waller, but it does seem like they're toning things down. Obviously, early season production was a little, high end of anybody. Even a Travis Kelce isn't seeing that type of targets every week. So I feel like he can continue to be a weekly guy. They also just added Zay Jones, which, we
can talk about Zay a little bit, man. As
the deep dynasty guy that kind of tracks the late round guys, the John Ross saga this year was really exciting, and then it just always ends the same. But I was, Zay Jones, second round pick just a few years ago, really productive in college, pretty athletic. He got drafted in the second round for a reason. Obviously hasn't come to fruition in Buffalo, but I feel like he fits Derek Carr pretty well, and they are in desperate need of a wide receiver to be decent. So I'm kind of interested. I don't think he's very good right now, but might have some big opportunity there.
Yeah, there was a tweet. I forgot who might have been one of the Raiders beats guys, beat follows or something like that. But basically, Mike Mayock had Zay Jones above. He might have been like his wide receiver 2 or something like that in that class. So Mayock gets his guy. Nate, we kind of zigged and zagged and all that here. So whatever you want to add to the fire, buddy, as far as Will Dissly, Darren Waller, Zay Jones, do you want to just keep it pushing?
I mean, here's the deal with Foster Moreau, at least. Why not bet on the guy with incredible athleticism? I mean, from the jump, right out of the draft, this was, the guy that you should have added. And this draft class was loaded with athletic tight ends. I think more so than we've even seen in years prior to this. So there were a lot of good players. And in his particular case, Moreau's 93rd percentile SPARQ score. So the college production for tight ends is really interesting too, because there have been guys that had very little college production, a la George Kittle, that come out and turn into, the best pass catching tight end in the league. So it's an interesting thing. Again, a transition to even like Will Dissly, a guy that wasn't a notorious pass catcher in college. And here he is, playing in Seattle. He does look like he's going to be a long-term weapon in this offense. And this is what Seattle does. They try to turn the late-round picks into playmakers. And in Seattle, they stick around. We've seen it before. So I would be obviously trying to acquire Will Dissly where I could, but clearly any player that's a top target in a Russell Wilson captained offense, that's the player that you want. But as far as Darren Waller, coming back down to earth, not so surprised. I mean, the 14-target game was an absolute anomaly. I think that really screwed with people's heads, especially coming off of 2 decent games prior to it. So I still like Waller in this offense, but like you said, you're seeing Foster Moreau start to trend the other direction, and you can't help but have a curiosity. And if you can add Moreau, add him.
I like it, man. I like it a lot. We got a couple more tight end related questions. We're going to save that for kind of the after hours segment here that our Patreon listeners are going to get to dive into. Looking ahead, as we got a few more questions here and a few more topics to cover. Josh Jacobs, again, very simply put, Rusty, I just want to know, Josh Jacobs looks like a heck of a running back. Josh Jacobs, good running back. Rusty, thoughts, comments, questions, concerns?
I'm in.
He's in.
I'm in. Yeah.
He's in.
Again, this is, we talk about teammates with wide receivers and with the breakout finder a lot and how that affects things. Josh Jacobs was playing with, monsters his whole career. So the fact that he was splitting carries wasn't as big of a deal to me. I was surprised that he went first round with that lack of college production. But once he was there, it was like, okay, well, he's going to get usage. He looks good. And, yeah, it's what they wanted Doug Martin to be, except Doug Martin was old and fat. So It's like they got what they actually wanted in Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna invest in a running back early in the first round, you got to go ahead and just feed him and just get whatever you can out of him. And again, to your point, at Alabama, it was similar to the Alvin Kamara story in Tennessee in that there wasn't a lot of wear on the tires. Kind of got caught behind a couple different bodies, and that was kind of the big knock on him coming out of school. Is where is he at production wise? How come these numbers don't stack up? Last week against Chicago, finally went over 123 yards on the ground, pair of scores, averaging 4.9 yards per carry on the season through 5 games. So a pretty impressive debut for a player that I kind of waned on a little bit during the draft process. Again, would have loved to see him on day 2 versus day 1. Nate, I think you and I are more or less on the same page as far as Josh Jacobs and our kind of pre-draft and draft and rookie dynasty ranking. Are you impressed, surprised? Any kind of final thoughts on the Josh Jacobs experience through the first quarter of the week of the season? Excuse me.
He's been a great rusher so far against some good defenses. The thing, and we've talked about this before, that's shocking is that he has 9 targets through 5 games. A player that was supposedly supposed to be a notoriously good pass catcher. It's a very weird thing. You would have expected him to have, significantly more targets. I mean, for Christ's sakes, Austin Ekeler had 16 targets last game. But I like Josh Jacobs. I like what I've seen from him, and he's probably had sex before.
Nate, great point. Great point,
he
Nate.
was holding that line.
Great point.
That's right.
One of the final questions, the final topic. Excuse me. Here, we're coming off of an incredible week for a ton of different players. Talked about Aaron Jones. Talked about Christian McCaffrey. The other one that was kind of teed up for us that everyone from the DFS world and the fantasy world in general was on from the very beginning was Will Fuller. This was the Will Fuller week. I'm still coming down from the high. I have him in a few rosters. I unfortunately played against him in a few different leagues. So Russ, again, this one was all the stars were aligning here. I can't imagine you were at all surprised. Is there the hope is that he continues that, of course, with the season, but the reality is he probably isn't going to put up those kind of numbers on a week-to-week basis. But you got to be relatively high on Will Fuller going forward. True or false?
True until Kenny Stills gets back, but let's pour some out for Keanu Neal.
Don't actually. You don't have to on your keyboard, bro. You don't have to. Your computer's slow enough as it is.
One of my favorite players in the league to watch, torn Achilles. I believe it was a torn Achilles and out for the year again. Just totally crippling the Falcons secondary. That's what we saw there. And we also saw no Kenny Stills. I think we have a looming issue when Kenny Stills returns that it's going to be, Stills is just good. We can't really deny that anymore. When he's in there, he's going to be sucking up deep targets. I was proud of myself. I posted the Spider-Man post, like pointing at Spider-Man meme when Kenny Stills, went to Houston. They are very similar players. I think Fuller's better, and I think he'll outproduce him this year. But that's a much bigger issue going forward for me.
So Nate, some potential dynasty implications here when you're talking about the arrival of Kenny Stills, when you're talking about, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is certainly entrenched. But Fuller, Stills, and then Kiki Kute is someone that a lot of these analysts, like to an extent, but it seems all of a sudden it's a bit crowded. Are you concerned for the future of a Stills, or I guess in this case, a Will Fuller?
I think Will Fuller's always going to have that big play ability. He's number 4 in air yards currently in the NFL with 542. So he's going to be targeted downfield, even though once upon a time people said that Deshaun Watson had helium in his arm or something like that, or he could only throw the ball like 2 miles an hour and he was never going to put it downfield. Seems inaccurate. But when you look at DeAndre Hopkins, there's been a bit of a dip in the production. I started tweeting about this morning, and it rattled some members of the Dynasty community deep to their core, and I heard about it from them in numbers. They came in waves. And I said, look, guys, DeAndre Hopkins is still elite. And when you look at his air yards, 526 to Will Fuller's 542, it's very close. The difference is some of the target share. I think that Will Fuller's going to have boom-bust weeks. If he can maintain the target share, then he may live in that world where he's, 5 catches for 85 during the week. But he's also going to deliver you those weeks where he's going to be, maybe 5 for 163 and a score. He just has that in him. DeAndre Hopkins, maybe not necessarily the same type of player, but to the point that Russ made, a healthy Kenny Stills in this offense is going to eat away at target share overall. He's a good player, and he's going to make plays on the field for this offense. So I'm curious to see what he does when this thing gets clicking. But God, Will Fuller came off a ridiculous game.
Yeah, he's he stuffed the box score, no doubt about it. Last one for this episode, boys, and we couldn't go a post week 5 episode without talking about the Minnesota wide receivers. It was a get right game, squeaky wheel narrative for Adam Thielen, who spoke out, publicly and I won't say criticized, but had some harsh words for Cousins in the passing game. And then we have the lingering issue of Steph Diggs and the subject of some trade rumors. I'm going to just take a personal note and just say my favorite team that I drafted this year had Steph Diggs, Brandon Cooks, Christian Kirk, Odell Beckham, Juju Smith. Got robbed Melvin Gordon in the 5th round or 6th round or something like that. I was going in high as can be, sitting pretty. I'm 1-4, struggling, man. So that was my 0 running back squad. I felt fantastic about it. But Steph Diggs, torpedoing teams. Juju, Odell, torpedoing teams. Russ, what are we doing with Stephon Diggs at this point? Are we hoping for a trade out of Minnesota?
This happened at the end of last year. It was just hidden by Dalvin Cook being hurt for the first half of the year. But they did this last year when Cook got healthy, and back in second half, he just plowed through and was getting all those touches and all the fantasy points. And that's their plan. They clearly think Cook is an all-pro type player, and I think he's proving to be that. I think that's a huge issue for the passing game because they want to run it, and Cook is enabling that, and most weeks they don't really have to pass, and I can't blame Zimmer for not wanting to, have Kirk Cousins throw 40 passes a game anymore. So I think it was great for fantasy, but not necessarily great for the Vikings winning games when that was going on. So kind of like, Remember that Russell Wilson year where they were just lighting it up, and he was throwing like that year he had huge volume, but they had like they were 9-7 or whatever. and now they're going slow paced again, and it's like now they're 4-1 and like just crushing teams.
That's right.
And I don't know what it is. I'm not getting into the run and pass debate. I don't know. Like, I have my old man takes that I still like running backs, but it seems like there's something to controlling the game, time of possession, and running the ball. So
I think in Minnesota you have probably an elite prospect in Dalvin Cook, who is an elite player, finally healthy, and gets someone like a Gary Kubiak who is designing these plays, who's had a long tenured success with the running backs that he's been able to coach. Nate, I am a diehard Stephon Diggs fan, and obviously the rosters, the teams that I have him on, are suffering because of it. Where does the story end, man?
Where does this story end? Wow, what a great question. Well, you have to start at the first page. You want to get there. Let me tell you this. First off, Minnesota Vikings are ranked number 32 in pass attempts in 2019, a.k.a. not a good thing. Not a good thing if you bought into Adam Thielen, who's had he's had a decent year. Not a good thing if you bought into Stephon Diggs, because Stephon Diggs actually has less targets on the year than Dalvin Cook. Let that sink in for a minute. We're 5 games into the regular season, and Dalvin Cook, the running back, has more targets than Stephon Diggs, a wide receiver that by all accounts coming into this year, we all thought was an elite talent. I think most people would agree he's at minimum a top 5 route runner in the league, age 26, coming off a great year last year, a guy who ascended from a draft position that seemed insurmountable. Him and Thielen alone is just a weird combination for both these two players to have made it this far. But the fact that Kirk Cousins is torpedoing rosters. It's not Diggs. It's not Thielen. It's Kirk Cousins. And I said this last week. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about Kirk Cousins. I just gotta say, when I said that Joe Flacco had 6 touchdowns and 4 interceptions? Well, Kirk Cousins has 5 fucking touchdowns on the year. He's got 5 touchdown passes. He's thrown the ball 126 times. Jared Goff in the last 2 weeks threw the ball 133 times. Think about that. He threw the ball more in 2 games than Kirk Cousins did in 5 games. Kirk Cousins is absolutely the worst thing that ever happened to Stephon Diggs. He's torpedoing this whole roster. Sure, Dalvin Cook looks great. I hope to God Dalvin Cook doesn't get hurt, because the only thing worse than putting a guy like him on the field way too often to get him hurt is having a quarterback like Kirk Cousins that can't do jack shit with his arm and is killing 2 borderline, elite players. Adam Thielen is incredible. Stephon Diggs is incredible. He has absolutely murdered their fantasy hopes, and I hope to God that Stephon Diggs goes somewhere else. Seriously, I hope that he leaves. People have said Seattle. I don't see that happening. I think Stephon Diggs has had too much sex to play there. He might be able to go to like the Detroit Lions, because Kenny Golladay looks like he's had like a lot. So, you're just kind of going back and forth. That's really
it's a good point.
His last name is Diggs, for Christ's sakes. All right,
go on. That's a good point. Russ, man, we don't have to talk about who's had sex with how many people here. If you want to, that's going to be for next week, man. It's going to be for next week. Russ, I'm assuming you don't want to take any more of a dump on Kirk Cousins than our guy Nate has already done. So with that, I think that's the end of the show sheet, guys. I'm exhausted. Russ, why don't you go ahead, plug what you got to plug, tell the people where they can find you, the good people of the podcast, rather than Nate, you can get us the hell out of here.
Well, I just want to throw out there, once Case Keenum gets out of his walking boot, trade for him. Andy Dalton on the block, trade for him. 3-man quarterback rotation in Minnesota.
Never been done before.
Switch off drives. Just let's try it out, man. Let's see how it goes.
What could possibly go wrong?
FantasyGuru.com. Come hang out with us. Have a lot of fun, a lot of dynasty content. Updating 2020 rookie rankings every week, and a lot of fun over there. And, I appreciate you guys having me on. Obviously, I'm like a proud stepfather right now. I feel like, I haven't seen you guys in a while, but I just came to your soccer game, and you
had like shades on, like kind of reading the paper, but kind of watching. Like
Nate scored a goal, like Ryan had 10 saves and a shutout.
Like threw up or something. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm really proud right now, and but joking aside, I love what's been going on, and I've been following it, and I love it. So. Yeah,
Russ is the man. I mean, him and I put a lot of time into this database. There was a lot of time. There were some elevated moments. There was some non-elevated moments. It was trying, but it was fun, man. And Russ and I were talking all the time. I like having you on. We haven't talked on Skype in a long time. We were talking on Skype like every other day for hours back when we were doing the project. So it's fun, man. So I will say this for the people listening. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about O.J. Howard, and we're taking this to Patreon. So if you want to hear Russ's take on O.J. Howard and the Breakout campaign, or on the other hand, whatever it is this year, go to breakoutfinder.com patreon.com/Breakout Finder. I've got my Dynasty Buys article up. We're going to have an awesome audio extra every week. We're going to do that right now with Russ. So get in there, sign up. We got a lot to offer. I'm working on getting a reward of t-shirts for the people that sign up to the tier that we put them in. So check that out. And Russ, man, thank you for coming on. You are one of the great founders of the Breakout Finder, and I'm glad to hear that it's making you proud.
Stepdad. Love that.
Stepdad, yeah. Thanks, Stepdad. All right, we're out of here. See you guys next week.